What's up, Raider Nation? Welcome back to Vegas Nation First and 10, your weekly go-to for Raider news and analysis. I'm Vinny Bonsignore. I cover the Raiders for the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. To my left is my great colleague and friend, Adam Hill. He also covers the Raiders and everything else under the sun for the Review-Journal and Vegas Nation. Before we get to the topics today, I want to remind everybody that all of Vegas Nation podcasts, including First and 10, are brought to you by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Stations, Casinos, STN Sports, and we always thank them for their support, as we thank you for your support. If you're watching us, listening to us, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe button. Vegas Nation has you covered wall to wall with Raider news, so if you have some friends in the family or friends or family members that are Raider fans, be sure to let them know about Vegas Nation and everything that we provide here. Send them a subscription for the holiday. It's July 4th. You know, what a great gift. Whether it's a birthday gift, Christmas, whatever the case might be, it makes for a great gift. And again, we thank you for your support. Adam Hill, we keep creeping along. We're here in now the first week of July. It's day before July 4th. Rookie players report on the 17th, so we're about 2 weeks away from the rookies reporting to training camp, and then a week later the Raiders veteran players report. First practice is July 23rd, so it's here, it's right around the corner, and I thought it would be an interesting starting point for today as we start looking ahead and start really gearing up for this Raiders season. It's a team that's made massive changes across the board. Ownership, general manager, head coach, new running back, new quarterback, on and on and on. But one of the, I think it's almost being understated, positional groups that I think is going to be hugely and profoundly so impactful for this team one way or another is the defensive line. Sure. And we got a chance to talk to Max Crosby over at the SAC Summit last week over at UNLV. It was interesting to catch up with Max Crosby. But, you know, when we talk about all these changes, it feels like we don't talk enough sometimes about the defensive line and the tone that it can set one way or another, again, for that defense and that team.
Yeah, for no question. I mean, I think they've invested very heavily, obviously, in the defensive line. There's no question about that. They've also found some younger players, some guys that they think are developmental pieces along that defensive line. It's going to be very important, especially when you have questions. And I don't think there's that many questions at linebacker. I think they're just okay.
For a year.
I think there's a ton of questions in the secondary.
Yeah.
And how do you fix that? How do you help that? Of
Right.
course,
yeah.
Bringing those guys along, but certainly by generating pressure, by having a good defensive line up front. And look, they need to be good. They're paying them to be good. They're expected to be good. They're expected to be the team leaders. And this is obviously dependent on what's going on with Christian Wilkins. But they've got a lot invested in that group for a reason. Like, they think they're going to carry them. They think they're the most important piece. The defensive coach, Rob Leonard, back because he's done a good job with those guys. So they expect a lot out of him. They need a lot out of him. And I think they're probably going to get a lot out of him.
Yeah, and let's start with Christian Wilkins. Obviously he suffers a fractured toe. It was a Jones fracture, week 5, and he actually played. I've been able to do some looking into that whole injury because once a guy gets hurt and this is the situation, he's out for the year, they disappear. Yeah. Right, and the quite honestly, nobody talks about him anymore. It's really weird how that works out in professional sports. So he leaves, you move on. We moved on, everyone moved on. But learning, because I think it's important for what he's dealing with right now. And we've all seen the photos. We've all heard some of the speculation. The Raiders are keeping a tight lid on it, as they should and do this time of year. Nobody talks about injuries.
I'll stop and say, it would have been very easy for Pete Carroll, when he's asked about it, to say he's coming along.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
He didn't do that.
No.
And I think that is where a lot of eyebrows were raised, where, you've talked to people, I've talked to people, everybody has kind of gotten a sense of where people think he is around the building and what the belief is. But when Pete Carroll went on the record in front of all the reporters, all the fans, everyone at a press conference, and gave a very long answer about they're concerned.
Yep.
I think that kind of opened the door to speculation about exactly where he is in the recovery and whether he'll be ready for the season.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the psychology behind what Pete said. Basically what he did was he set up a scenario from A to Z, and be prepared for any scenario. And I actually think
be
that's
prepared for him to be there at day one of training camp, or be prepared for him to miss the season.
Right, exactly. And I don't think it's the latter. I don't think that's the case, and that's why I think it's important to kind of go back a little bit to understand sort of what happened. All right, so that injury, come to find out, he hurt himself earlier in the game, and he played through it. Okay, so he played through it until they said you got to come off the field. No more. He gets the surgery the very next day, literally the very next day, which is kind of unusual. Sometimes players take a little bit of time to do the surgery. Comes toward the end of the season, he was on target to come back. He was kind of pushing to come back late last season, and the Raiders said no. They were out of it. They went through the long losing streak. Take care of yourself. Don't want to push it. So that's where he was at the end of last season, and by January, at the very end of the season, it was basically a clear path for him to be ready for OTAs, minicamp, all of those things. Obviously, he suffered a setback. There was a setback, no question about that. So the original injury was an 8 to 12 week injury recovery. All right, that's why he was kind of on target to maybe even come back at some point last year. They put the kibosh on that. So the way it's been explained to me, it's a couple of different things that could have happened. He could have re-broken the original injury, or there's usually a screw that's inserted for this type of injury that could have broken. And in either case, it remains an 8 to 12 week rehab. So we saw the picture of him with the walking boot on. It felt to me like that was post-surgery, right? If there was a procedure, I would imagine if he had the surgery a day after the injury happened originally, he was probably going to get, as soon as there was a sign that something was wrong, he was going to get whatever follow-up surgery he was going to need to fix it. So now we're dealing with that timeline, right? And it just depends if there was a procedure, which let's just assume there was. It depends on when that surgery happened, and we just don't know when that happened.
I think it's, I read Pete Carroll's answer as they obviously know a lot more than we do,
of course.
And they've shared a little bit behind the scenes, but not a whole lot. And then they understand where it is, but I think they're also, my interpretation from what came out is that there is uncertainty there too. Like, they don't have a definitive answer.
Correct.
And not that they would give it if they did, but I think it was very clear that they don't know. They just don't know.
Right.
And they'd love to have him sooner rather than later. They'd love to have him back for training camp. Probably doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. But they're not writing him off, certainly, for the season.
No.
But I think there also is that chance of, like, hey, once it's redone, once there's the aggravation, like, there is the chance that it is a lingering thing that could potentially be even longer. So I don't think anybody's suggesting that he's clearly out for the season.
Right.
But I think that there is that at least preparation being made of, like,
For
hey,
sure.
this is possible.
Yeah, and Pete's been around the block.
Yeah.
So, and I actually think it was, putting ourselves in his cleats, probably the right. I was a little surprised, by the answer, but the more you think about it, like, if you're in that position, why wouldn't you create a range of because how many times but you said it was only going to be a month-long thing, and 3 months down the line, the guy's still hurt, and you're like, now you have to now you're answering questions.
That's why I expected he's working his way back.
Yeah. Yes.
He's working really hard. He's working his way back.
But
that's it. But it was a very, very long answer.
It was, and it totally was. But I think that, like I said, it kind of in retrospect, I might have done the same thing, because now there's no, like I said, it was going to be a long time. So we don't know when he's back. He's, maybe maybe when and I'm sure that'll be a day one question.
Vague. I think, look, usually, and I'll say this, because I don't think this is the case in Pete Carroll's situation. Usually when that happens, traditionally, most coaches, most teams,
like 99.9% of the time.
It's because they are frustrated with the player.
True.
Usually.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I don't think that's the case.
No.
Usually it's a coach sending a message of, like, hey, man, we don't even know.
Right.
He's there's a lot going on. We don't know. And that's usually a coach sending a message to a player of, like, get it together.
Well, and
I don't think that's the case here.
Yeah,
that's why it was so surprising, I think, that he gave that kind of answer.
Yeah, and it's interesting you point that out, because in the work that I've done looking into this, at least the people that I talked to that know him really well and know what the situation was, they're like, that would be anything but.
Right.
It was literally explained to me, like, this is a guy who got the surgery a day after.
He did everything he could to try to get back as soon as he could, even for a losing team.
With the qualifying of, and by the way, he had just signed a lucrative contract. So like he's in their eyes anyway, he was anything but somebody that was gonna, hey, I'll see you when I see you type of a thing. So I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. I don't think there was a message there. I think the message was to everybody out there, Raider fans, like, look, this could be long. It might be on the very long end, or he might be back by training camp, but be prepared for the worst.
And there is at least one player in recent Raiders history that I'm thinking of who the coaches were basically like, hey, man, he's doing what he can. And he could have they thought he could be back, and he wasn't back. that was happening at some point in the last couple of years.
Okay.
It's a player that is no longer on the team, obviously.
Right. Is he still in football?
Did he just? I don't know if he signed.
Oh,
I'm not sure if he signed. But yeah, there was at least one player that I think that there was a lot of people around the building like, yeah, he should be fine.
There were.
I know what he's doing.
There was actually, now that I think about it, a few that fell into that category. But it is what it is. So that
but
being,
it's important to say once again though, we are not talking about Christian Wilkins.
No, not at all.
And I'm saying, usually when this course of events happens and a coach says those kind of things, you would think, man, they are frustrated with him. I do not believe that is the case.
Right, exactly. And that was made abundantly clear to me by somebody like, this is not a guy that you would be questioning that. In fact, he did sort of not the opposite of what other players have done, but he was really ardent about one. I mean, like you said, it was a losing.
And it's also possible, and I think
that could have
it's a speculation a little bit, but it's been suggested very loosely that him going so hard to try to come back is what caused maybe potentially him to be a setback, and that's often why teams have to save players from themselves.
Yes,
they're like, no, you can't do that.
Right.
Like, this is not you cannot be don't be crazy. Like, take the time, go with the process, and work your way back. And in this case, it seemed like Christian Wilkins was very, very eager to get back on the field.
Okay, so obviously something happened. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and so the Raiders have to be prepared for one or the other, probably both a little bit. At least to start the season. So let's now focus on who is on hand.
Sure.
And it's interesting because obviously Max Crosby, you could pretty much write, if he stays healthy, I think you could write the numbers down of the range that you would expect him to produce. On the opposite side of him, Malcolm Kuntz is coming off a knee injury. Whoa. On one hand, you want to say, yeah, he'll just pick up right where he left off, but that's easier said than done as well. Right?
It is, yeah. Especially coming off an injury, usually it
missed a full season of football.
Settle yourself back in. It's maybe even it's maybe even like an adjustment year for some players.
Yeah.
Of, hey, he's not going to be back to where he was. And let's also I completely believe in Malcolm Kuntz's talent. I think he's a really, really good player. I think he has a very high ceiling. But we have a very short sample size of him playing at that level.
We do.
Right? I mean, he got there, and when the last half of 2023.
Yeah.
The years trying to run together. Now.
Right,
last half of 2023, he was sensational.
He was,
and that's why everybody expected that he was going to be sensational again in 2024.
It was why that was one of the reasons why they felt good about giving the money investing that money into Christian Wilkins, because they felt like they were going to turn a defensive line into an elite defensive line because Malcolm was coming off the season that he was coming off. And the previous general manager, Tom Telesco, a Buffalo guy, was well aware of, in fact, he made it sound like he wanted to draft him, and the Raiders kind of beat him to the punch the year that, 2021?
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. But again, there's uncertainty here.
Yeah, and so you would say if he's able to get back to that level right away, then obviously that's best case scenario, and that is a very, very good sign for the Raiders in the future. Is it likely? Probably not that he's at that level right away.
Right away, yeah.
So we'll see. And like I said, it was a long build to get to that level. Is it a long build again, or is it you pick up right where he left off? That will be interesting to find out, and that is a big question for the defensive line going into the season.
All right, so we move inside. Now you got a chance to talk to Jonah Lalu, the local Las Vegas kid. Who, quite honestly, kind of another coup right there by Tom Telesco and his group to just jump on that signing immediately after he was waived by the Indianapolis Colts, right? Felt like he was a player that just kept getting better as the season went on. The more opportunities he got, the better he played, and I think has put himself into range to whether he's a rotational player or a potential starter, somebody that I think has an intriguing future.
Yeah, for sure. And I first of all, great kid.
Yeah.
For those that haven't, got to hear him talk or been around him at all, very cool with the fans. So if you see him, talk to him.
Yeah, say hi.
We had a really, really good conversation out at the SAC Summit, and we were just kind of talking. And then I asked him if it would be cool if we went on the record and I put some of this stuff out there because he has something, and I think a lot of people roll their eyes at this, and I get it because it's not a diagnosable thing. But he discussed a real battle with imposter syndrome last year. And for those that don't understand that, it's more of a phenomenon. I looked into it a lot in terms of what the psychology of it is. A lot because I have very much dealt with this at times as well. Steph Curry actually has talked about this.
Okay.
That he has it too.
Why don't you explain it?
So essentially, it's you don't feel you deserve what other people believe that you've earned. So in Jonah Laulu's case, he said anytime somebody would say something good about him, he was so much doubting himself. He thought, and this sounds very tough to kind of put together. He thought that he was so bad that they were making fun of him. Like a coach would go up after a practice, or a defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, would speak during the week and say, "Man, Jonah Laulu had some really good reps. Really liked what he did this week," and he would kind of retreat into
internalize,
a shell, and he would say, he's making fun of me.
Right.
Like, I was so bad that he's literally going up there making fun of me, and then they're all going back and laughing.
Yeah.
Like, here, I said Jonah was great. Ha ha.
Wow.
Mistakes. Like, that's what he was dealing with. And there's different levels of it. It's not something that it's real. It's very much studied, but it hasn't really been studied much for one reason, because people don't like to admit this. Because
right.
Like, I don't want to talk about this because then somebody will figure me out. Like,
right.
You really are in that deep. Like, Jonah said he almost felt like he was a local kid that they were like, "Hey man, we're gonna let you play for this team, but obviously you stink. And
right.
Like, you don't belong here."
That's a tough place to be mentally.
Yeah, like we're gonna just let you in.
Right.
And I'll say like that I have like I said, I've dealt with this. I've also, like, every time I've ever this is gonna be fun for viewers and listeners. Every time I've ever turned in a story, every time I've ever done a podcast, every time I've ever done an interview, I get done and I say that was awful. Like, I'm never doing this again. Like, why are they allowing me to do this? Like,
right.
I've dealt with this. I have worked with somebody in the past who wasn't. It was in radio in the distant past. Who wasn't that great. Literally every time he would finish a radio show, he would take off the headset and say, "I crushed it today. I was amazing."
So he was overcompensating
I would be like, how does that
right.
How does that work? And I think there has to be a happy medium
for
in
sure.
somebody's life, right? So
for sure.
I don't think it's good for a player to every week say, "I crushed it."
Yeah.
And I don't think it's good for a player for every game to say, "I was terrible."
Right.
Like, there's got to be somewhere in the middle, I feel like.
So how has he balanced that out?
So one of the things he said, some of the new coaches have really maybe figured out how to talk to him a little bit better or different. Not better. Better's not the
right
word.
Right, because you don't.
Has nothing to do with the other people.
No.
Has nothing to do with a coach.
Right.
Speaking to him, but maybe,
reaffirming.
So one of the things he said, and I wrote about this in the column, is that he knew that he had great OTAs.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I crushed it. And he said afterwards he got a text from one of the defensive assistants, and it said, "Hey, you're great, but
okay,
this, and this."
Yeah.
And he said, for some reason, it clicked to me saying, "Yeah, I was really good, but he's right. Like, I need to work on this, and this." So
right.
It wasn't just somebody saying, "Hey, you were great."
Yeah.
It was, but this, and this.
Yeah.
And he said, because I had so much confidence from how I performed, I was also able to process, like, okay, yeah, but I also have this to do.
Good for him.
And like I said, it's not a permanent thing. It's not like a diagnosable thing. So it's not something you can't get over. It's not something you can't deal with. But it is something you have to figure out, and recognition of it is very important.
Yeah.
Of, like, I understand that this is where I am, right?
Right.
And so I don't think he's not looking for, like, sympathy from people.
No.
Hey, feel bad for me. I have to deal with this stuff. But he's just being honest and open about where he is. And I think his understanding of it, and his belief of like, I need to understand how to process information better is very important. And I really appreciate Jonah talking about it for sure. And like I said, I hope, cheap plug, I guess, here, but that's so what do we do? I hope people read about his story.
So we're at VegasNation.com. Absolutely give it a read. When we get down to what he could provide for this team, and hopefully the mind is aligned with everything else, because from a physical standpoint and just a football player standpoint, it's a very intriguing young player.
Yeah, I think he can be really good. And he said himself, I watched tape of myself last year, and I realized like what people saw like in terms of positive signs, but I also am like, that's not me anymore. Like, I'm totally different. He's so comfortable in where he is. And he thinks he can take a big leap this year. I think that's very possible.
What do you think? How do you think that plays out? Let's say, at least initially, if Christian's not available.
I was going to say, I think that has a lot to do with whether Christian Wilkins is there or not, or how much he plays, or how much he's able to play. And if he's there and he's playing a full complement of snaps, like that obviously
is he a starter?
Limits.
You got Adam Butler, who I think is probably best suited as a rotational guy. But also showed last year without question that he can handle starting duty.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in an ideal world for them, that's a kind of a true rotation.
Yeah, if that's right.
I mean, I think that's kind of what they would hope for, that they could rotate fresh bodies in, and and playing, obviously playing next to Max and potentially Malcolm, and Tyree Wilson in the mix as well. Like, I feel like that is they'd love to have just fresh bodies that they can move in and out. They trust fully.
Kind of like what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how John Spytek and the Buccaneers, have handled their defensive line. The Philadelphia Eagles are the clear example right now, contemporarily, of a team that comes at you in waves.
Yeah.
And so the starting roles are important, but they have so many bodies, and they're rotating so many different guys in there that they kind of overwhelm an opposing offensive line, and they keep guys fresh, so guys are good at the end of games and throughout games. So if we're looking at a rotation, how do you see a rotation playing out? Because that is they've got a lot of players there, and even Zach Carter was a pretty decent player last year. So there's a lot of bodies. I think there's going to be some tough cuts. A lot of it's going to be predicated on where Christian is. But how do you see that defensive line ultimately shaping up?
I mean, I think the way that he kind of trended, and the way that I think he's trending this offseason, I think Jonah could become now a viable starter.
Right.
I mean, I think that would be maybe an ideal situation for the Raiders to have him. Obviously he's
with a healthy Christian Wilkins.
He's young, he's developing, he's still very cheap. Like that would be an ideal world for them. With Christian Wilkins there, with other guys in the mix for sure. But like I said, I think true rotation is where they want to be. But I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's a bad thing if Jonah Laulu is the starter there.
No, not at all. How do you see the rookies, Pegues and Hemingway, kind of melding themselves into that rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a big part of it. I mean, I think they're certainly in the rotation on the team. I think when you talk about, I'd be surprised if many of the guys that were drafted, even though they drafted a lot of guys, I think most of them are probably making the team, because that's tends to be what happens when you have a new regime.
Yeah.
Especially, it's like, hey, those are our guys.
I'd be shocked if all of them didn't make the team at this point.
Yeah. Trying to think through. Yeah, I would think that would probably be the case. So you've got those guys in the mix for sure. I don't know that they're ready day one for what this team is. I mean, we've talked about like what this team is. They're clearly showing that they're not about developing necessarily. They're about trying to win.
Yeah.
And so like I would think in an ideal world, like guys like Jonah and guys like the rookies are the ones that are playing, because you want to develop them and you want to build up to where you're where you're.
And I think you could do that along the defensive line because of what you're talking about.
You want all of them to be in the mix. You want all of them to be part of it, and so you can work them in for sure. But yeah, I think in an ideal world, you're playing all those guys to try to see what you have and to try to help them develop in the league. But I think everything that they are doing shows that they want to try to compete. And so now it's not going to be, hey, we're just developing guys. We want guys that are going to help us win right now.
Right. All right. So let's go on that train of thought. You got Max Crosby. Let's just say Christian Wilkins is healthy week 1. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Jonah as the other starter.
Yeah.
Malcolm. And then behind them, Tyree Wilson at one defensive end. Zach Carter, I think, is going to be in the mix as one of the Adam Hill, obviously, or Adam
Hill.
Adam Butler.
Yeah.
So that's
Snowden played pretty well.
Snowden's going to be in there as well.
I mean, yeah, he's if his Instagram's to be believed, he is grinding right now.
Yeah, I think he smells the opportunity right now.
The opportunity and the competition, right? I mean,
correct.
There's no guarantee. He could either be in the mix very much to be playing a lot or cut. I mean, he's in that range.
So we just named 8 guys.
There's a lot of bodies.
We just named 8 guys.
There's a ton of bodies there for sure.
And then we didn't even get to the rookies. So I'm curious to see which one of those rookies breaks through as a guy that's going to be on the 47.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be like, if I was a Raider fan, if that isn't in the first couple of weeks of the season, I wouldn't be freaking out. That's actually a good problem to have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've mentioned this, I think, every show, the nearly 300 transactions of Pete Carroll his first year in Seattle.
Right.
And, I think they're going to be making moves every week.
And by the way, if any of those rookies, defensive tackles, shows that they're ready, he's not going to hesitate to play them as well. And that's part of his history as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where they're at. And I think there is an understanding of, there is a lot of young guys that you want to have time to develop in addition to the veterans that you brought in. So, I think we're going to see a lot of that this year.
Real quick, we're going to go to our own Heidi Fang and Chuck Esposito, the race and sportsbook director at Station Casinos, and they've got some nice little tips for you guys in their weekly segment.
And joining us now on the First and 10 podcast, we have the race and sportsbook director, Chuck Esposito, in for his weekly segment. I'm Heidi Fang here joining you, and we're going to get into some of the numbers at STN Sports right now. Of course, it's a little lull in football, so I know that there's been movement, Chuck, on the NHL lines, especially with the Golden Knights. With their recent acquisition of Mitch Marner, we've seen the numbers on their futures jump. What can you tell us about that?
First, it's great to be on with you, Heidi. I mean, it's hot outside, but when it comes to the ice, I mean, it's been pretty cool for the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, every offseason, it seems like they are big name hunting. They were once again this year, especially with able to put Pertangelo on the long-term IR, and they went out and arguably got the best name or the biggest name out there in Mitch Marner. It has a dramatic effect on their odds. They were about, I think, the 6th or 7th team as far as our future book odds to win the Cup next year at 10-1. They now sit 7-1, the second choice behind the Florida Panthers. I think the one thing to look at this year is the cap went up. It looks like it's going to go up next year. So a lot of teams were able to kind of maintain and sign their free agents, and that's what Florida did.
I also just want to get what's happening right now with the NBA. I know a lot of the futures have been released for the upcoming season and the championship. What have you seen shake out with some of those numbers?
Well, we have seen, I mean, the Hawks have dropped dramatically on the Eastern Conference, I think, with what they did. The big key is that the Eastern Conference right now, I think you look at the Knicks and the Cavaliers because they're healthy. The Celtics with no Tatum, the Pacers with no Halliburton. It's going to affect things dramatically. I think the Dallas Mavericks, you're normally not a good team who drafts number 1, but that happened to the Mavericks. So I think when you can put Cooper Flagg in there, they're going to be a very good team. A lot of movement right now. The Lakers went out and got Eaton to be kind of that big center. Does he do enough to kind of help them offensively? But a lot of movement in both the NHL and the NBA futures, and it's great. Check out the STN Sports app, and you can see kind of all the changes that have happened. We still have that $50 no-worry wager going on, up to $50 right now, and I know it's hot outside, as I said. There's a lot of cool features there, and we've got both the Summer League coming up, an NBA and a WNBA All-Star game coming up, MLB All-Star game coming up, and all the football stuff on the app as well.
All right, a little bit of football talk. We've got to squeeze something in here, Chuck, and that brings me to Arch Manning. He's been hyped right now all over town and different sports books as being the guy to be the Heisman Trophy winner for this season. I've seen odds all over 5-1 as far as being a favorite, plus 325 to be the favorite to win the Heisman. I'm curious, first of all, what have you seen on the movement with Arch Manning, the ticket count, what's coming in on him, and some of the bets that people are making for not just Archie Manning to win the Heisman Trophy, but also for the Longhorns to win the title this year. What kind of money have you seen on people kind of investing here in Arch Manning?
Yeah, I mean, there had definitely been some tickets on him. People are looking for a little bit more value than one of the guys at the top of the board. I think the jury's still out a bit. The one luxury he has that he plays for a Texas team that has a really good offense. They're going to score a lot of points. They're one of the top teams as far as ranking goes in the country right now. But we'll see. We'll see. He didn't get a lot of time last year, how he kind of progresses and molds in that offense. But as far as the ticket count goes, I believe he's third on the board as far as tickets wagered on Arch Manning to win the Heisman Trophy.
Last year, Chuck, I told you I was going to get in for some of the contests. I'm sorry I never made it, but the No Worry Wager is back. That's a promotion that you guys have that ensures some of these incoming bettors that they can wager some money and not have to worry so much. I would like it if you could tell us a little bit about that, as well as your August 1st contest coming up for football once NFL season gets a little bit closer to us, Chuck.
I expect you to fully be in it this year and compete. But yeah, our last man standing, our signature pro contest and college contest, we should start taking entries on August 1st. So it's great. I mean, I think the pros guaranteed 150, the college 100. You sign up for one entry is $25. You sign up for 4 to 100, and you get that fifth entry free. So it's a great contest. It's a lot of fun. And if you win, you move on to the next week. So a lot of excitement there. And for a small investment, I know there's some big contests out there that are a lot of fun. This one's a little bit smaller, but still you can turn it, as the late great Brian Blessing used to say, from matchsticks to lumber yards for a $25 investment.
Thanks, Chuck, so much for all of the information. And don't forget, everyone, you can download the STN Sports app today, as well as head out to any of the locations around town to find out about some of these promotions and contests that Chuck was just laying out for you and how to get involved. But for now, that'll do it for us. Back to Adam and Vinny.
Thank you to Heidi Fang and Chuck Espazito from Station Casinos. He's the sports and racebook director at Station Casinos. All right, let's just close this up. We talked about the defensive line. We talked about the importance of the defensive line, setting the tone for the entire defense. As I'm with Adam, I think the linebackers for this year anyway are fairly set. A lot of veterans there that have been there, done that. It's a secondary that I'd be a little bit concerned about. A good defensive line certainly helps a growing defensive backfield. But let's talk real quick about Max Crosby and what a healthy Max Crosby, newly minted as a new contract extension that he got, I'm sure, last year because of the injury. Didn't leave a bad taste in his mouth, but he's itching to get back and get back on track. We know how prideful he is. If you were to predict some numbers for Max Crosby this year, I kind of feel like he's set up for his best year ever, and that's saying a lot. But do you think that this is a player that could get into that 17, 18, 19 sack range this year?
Potentially. I'm more intrigued because sacks are obviously it's a tough number to predict. A lot of it is what other guys are doing. A lot quarterback based, all those things. It's more about pressures and that sort of thing. I'm more intrigued by Max Crosby's snap count. That's to me, that's the biggest thing. He's like a 96, 97% guy, which is preposterous. It probably shouldn't happen.
You're going to get such a fight on his.
You are, him. But we have heard, and I listen to almost everything John Spytek ever says. I've said this before. I've always been obsessed with his mind about football, and now even more so. The way he's here, and he said in multiple interviews that he has had that conversation with Max. That it's like, hey, it's time.
Yeah.
Like, no more of this.
Right.
And so I'm interested. Can they get him below 90%? And that's what the games that he plays, I'm saying, not including when he doesn't, per game. Could they get him around 80, which I think
let me ask you this. How much does Tyree Wilson play into that in terms of
Sure, he has to be productive.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think that they feel like Max will be more productive with less snaps. And I think that's where they want him to get. So that's the number I'm going to be watching this year. I would think, I think the first step is getting below 90. I think they'd probably want him around 80 to somewhere around there. I would say 85%, a good number to look at. Is he over that? I would expect him to be over 85%. But I think that's probably where they want him to be.
Yeah.
And so that'll be the number I'm tracking most this year.
Yeah, and I always go back to this. I think the offense plays a role in that, extending drives, but also getting leads, right? And putting the opposing offense into a position where, can't run the ball right now. Got to keep throwing it. Numbers get accumulated because of that. You can pin your ears back. And that's where the rotation comes into play, where keeping a Max Crosby fresher so that he's able to go do what he does in attacking the quarterback. But it's just such a because I've heard him on right. He's talked about this on podcasts. I don't think he likes having that conversation.
But I think he also, I think last year could help the conversation.
Right.
It's hey, we have no direct evidence that the fact that you played too many snaps is what led to the recurring injuries last year.
Well,
it doesn't help.
Didn't it happen on the
last play of the Baltimore game?
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it can happen anytime.
It can absolutely.
So there's no evidence directly.
No.
But I think that they could say, hey, man, like you don't want to have what happened last year happen again.
Right.
Be fresh. Take some reps off, and we'll pick up those snaps when you're out there, like a 2nd and 3 at some point. All right.
Yeah. I guess if I was having the conversation, it would be need you to be fresh in the fourth quarter.
Right.
Need you to be fresh at the end of the season.
Exactly.
And so take a page. He's a big NBA fan. Take a page out of the NBA and trying to preserve. But again, good luck having that conversation. Although, somebody like a Pete Carroll and a John Spytek, people that have been around the block a little bit and have a track record of success, maybe that resonates a little bit differently.
Doubtful. They can try.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's you're 98%.
98% snap count.
You're 98% snap count. So we got to have a conversation with you, Adam Hill. All kidding aside, enjoy your 4th of July weekend. Be safe. Counting down the days to when rookies report in just a couple of weeks. We've got you covered here at Vegas Nation. In fact, we're going to be starting our positional. We talked about the defensive line today. But starting, I think it's next Saturday, whatever the date that is, the 10th or so, whatever date that is, we're going to start the 12th, July 12th. We're going to start our positional breakdowns in terms of key battles, who makes the team, who's could be on the bubble. Keep an eye out for that. A week from this Saturday, we'll start that with the quarterbacks. I believe is first up. And then we're going to be counting the days to training camp. It'll be here before you know it. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back talking to you guys next week. Really appreciate the support. Want to say thanks to the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Stations Casinos for their support. Thanks to Heidi Fang for all the great work that she does. Until next week, have a great weekend.